What would you do if your father was murdered, your mother institutionalized, and you were left to fend for yourself in a world that hated you? This is the story of Malcolm X, a man who transformed his life from the depths of despair to become one of the most influential figures in American history. Stay tuned to discover the incredible journey of Malcolm X. Malcolm X's life is a powerful story of transformation, resilience, and unwavering dedication to justice. Born Malcolm Little, he experienced a tumultuous childhood marked by tragedy and systemic racism. From a life of crime to a prison conversion that introduced him to the Nation of Islam, Malcolm emerged as a formidable voice for Black empowerment. His journey took a pivotal turn during a pilgrimage to Mecca, leading him to embrace a more inclusive vision of racial unity. Despite facing constant threats, Malcolm X's legacy continues to inspire movements for equality and human rights. Join us as we delve into the remarkable journey of Malcolm X, a man who transformed his life and changed the course of history. Malcolm X, born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska, faced immense adversity from the start. His father, Earl Little, was an outspoken Baptist preacher and avid supporter of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, advocating for Black self-reliance and pride. This activism made Earl a target of the white supremacist group, the Black Legion. In 1931, Earl Little was found dead, his body mangled beside a streetcar track, in what was officially ruled an accident but widely believed to be a murder. The tragedy didn't end there. Malcolm's mother, Louise, struggled to keep the family together amid harassment from white neighbors and economic hardship. Eventually, Louise's mental health deteriorated, leading to her institutionalization in 1938. Malcolm and his siblings were separated and placed in foster homes and state institutions. Despite these harsh circumstances, young Malcolm showed promise in school. However, his dreams were crushed when a teacher told him that being a lawyer was no realistic goal for a nigga. Disheartened, Malcolm dropped out of school at age 15. He moved to Boston to live with his half-sister Ella and quickly became involved in the city's criminal underworld. Known as Detroit Red due to his red hair, Malcolm engaged in gambling, drug dealing, and robbery. In 1946, at the age of 20, Malcolm's criminal activities caught up with him, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for burglary. This period marked a turning point in his life, setting the stage for his radical transformation from a street hustler to one of the most influential figures in American history. While serving his sentence at Charlestown State Prison, Malcolm Little underwent a profound transformation that would redefine his life's purpose. Initially rebellious and angry, Malcolm's outlook began to change when he encountered the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Introduced to the nation by his siblings, Malcolm found a new sense of direction and identity. He began to correspond with Elijah Muhammad, who encouraged him to abandon his destructive habits and embrace the tenets of the Nation of Islam, which emphasized Black self-reliance, moral rectitude, and the rejection of white oppression. During this period, Malcolm embarked on a rigorous self-education journey. He spent countless hours in the prison library, reading books on history, philosophy, religion, and literature. He memorized the dictionary, expanding his vocabulary and honing his communication skills. This intellectual awakening, combined with his newfound religious beliefs, sparked a determination to fight against the systemic injustices that had plagued his life and the lives of Black people in America. By the time Malcolm was paroled in 1952, he had transformed into a disciplined, articulate, and charismatic advocate for the Nation of Islam. He discarded his slave name Little and adopted X to symbolize the unknown African heritage lost due to slavery. Malcolm X emerged from prison with a mission to uplift and empower Black Americans through the teachings of the Nation of Islam. But would Malcolm's transformation be enough to redeem his past and sustain his newfound purpose? The stakes were high as he re-entered a society rife with racial tension and discrimination. Ready to challenge the status quo and fight for justice, his next steps would not only shape his destiny, but also alter the course of the civil rights movement in America. After his release from prison in 1952, Malcolm X wasted no time in immersing himself in the work of the Nation of Islam. Moving to Detroit, he quickly rose through the ranks due to his unparalleled oratory skills, charisma, and unyielding dedication to the cause. Malcolm's dynamic speeches attracted large crowds, and his tireless recruitment efforts led to a significant increase in the NOI's membership. In 1953, Elijah Muhammad appointed Malcolm as the minister of Temple No. 7 in Harlem, New York. Under his leadership, the temple flourished, becoming one of the most influential centers of the NOI. Malcolm's presence was magnetic. His powerful and fiery sermons spoke directly to the struggles and frustrations of Black Americans, advocating for Black empowerment, self-defense, and separation from white society. Malcolm X's influence extended beyond Harlem. He traveled across the United States, establishing new temples and invigorating existing ones. His eloquence and militant stance garnered media attention, making him the public face of the Nation of Islam. Interviews and debates with prominent figures catapulted him to national prominence, bringing the teachings of the NOI to a broader audience. However, Malcolm's rising star also brought increased scrutiny and tension. His outspoken nature and criticism of the civil rights movement's more moderate leaders, such as Martin Luther King Jr., created friction. He denounced the integrationist approach, advocating instead for Black nationalism and self-reliance. This stance resonated with many, but also drew criticism from those who viewed it as divisive. As Malcolm's influence grew, so did the stakes. The FBI began to closely monitor his activities, viewing him as a potential threat to national security. Within the NOI, jealousy and distrust simmered among some of its leaders, wary of Malcolm's growing power and popularity. Despite these challenges, Malcolm X remained steadfast in his mission, becoming a symbol of Black pride and resistance. But as his influence expanded, so did the cracks within the Nation of Islam. Would Malcolm's uncompromising vision and meteoric rise create insurmountable rifts within the organization he helped build? The stage was set for a dramatic and pivotal chapter in Malcolm X's life, where the personal and political stakes were higher than ever. Despite Malcolm X's immense contributions to the Nation of Islam, tensions began to surface as his prominence grew. His increasing visibility and outspoken nature started to create friction within the NOI's leadership. Malcolm's direct and often controversial statements, particularly his criticism of civil rights leaders and his views on race relations, garnered widespread attention, sometimes overshadowing Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Malcolm's disillusionment with the NOI deepened when he discovered troubling personal scandals involving Elijah Muhammad. Allegations of Muhammad's affairs with young secretaries and the resulting children contradicted the moral and ethical standards he preached. Feeling betrayed and grappling with a crisis of faith, Malcolm began to distance himself from the organization he had fervently promoted. In 1964, Malcolm made a life-altering decision to leave the Nation of Islam. This break was not just organizational, but ideological. Seeking a deeper understanding of Islam, he embarked on a pilgrimage to Mecca, known as the Hajj. This journey was transformative. In Mecca, Malcolm encountered Muslims of all races, praying together in unity, which profoundly impacted his worldview. He returned with a new name, El-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, and a new vision for the fight against racial injustice, one that embraced all races and promoted human rights on a global scale. This shift in perspective led Malcolm to establish the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU, which aimed to unite all people of African descent and fight for their rights collectively. His speeches began to reflect a broader, more inclusive approach to racial justice, advocating for solidarity across racial lines and calling for international human rights. However, Malcolm's new direction did not come without risks. His break from the NOI made him a target for both former allies and powerful enemies. The Nation of Islam viewed his departure and new teachings as a betrayal, leading to escalating threats against his life. Meanwhile, his growing influence and radical ideas continued to draw intense scrutiny from the FBI and other government agencies. As Malcolm navigated these turbulent waters, the stakes couldn't have been higher. His commitment to justice and equality put him in constant danger, yet he remained undeterred, driven by an unwavering belief in his cause. The question loomed: could Malcolm's new vision for racial unity and justice survive the mounting threats against him? In the face of growing hostility and danger, Malcolm X stood resolute, forging a path that would forever alter the course of the civil rights movement. His journey was one of continuous growth, conflict, and an unyielding quest for truth and justice. In the final years of his life, Malcolm X's journey was marked by profound transformation, escalating threats, and a relentless pursuit of justice. After his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1964, Malcolm returned to the United States with a broader, more inclusive vision for the fight against racial oppression. He founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU, which aimed to unite all people of African descent in the struggle for human rights and social justice. Malcolm's speeches during this period reflected his new global perspective. He began to advocate for the rights of oppressed people worldwide, emphasizing the interconnectedness of struggles for freedom and equality. This shift not only broadened his appeal, but also intensified the threats against him. His former allies in the Nation of Islam viewed his actions as betrayal, and the FBI's surveillance of Malcolm reached new heights. Despite the dangers, Malcolm continued to speak out with unwavering courage. His eloquence and conviction drew larger crowds, and his message of empowerment and resistance resonated deeply with many. However, the hostility from the Nation of Islam became increasingly palpable. On February 14, 1965, Malcolm's home was firebombed, narrowly missing him and his family. This attack underscored the imminent threat to his life, but also reinforced his determination to continue his work. On February 21, 1965, at the Audubon Ballroom in New York City, Malcolm X delivered what would be his final speech. As he addressed the audience, tensions were high. Suddenly, chaos erupted as 3 gunmen from the Nation of Islam opened fire, assassinating Malcolm in front of his followers, his wife Betty, and his children. He was just 39 years old. The assassination of Malcolm X was a devastating blow to the civil rights movement. In the immediate aftermath, there was an outpouring of grief and anger. His death highlighted the deep divisions within the struggle for racial justice and underscored the high stakes involved in challenging the status quo. Yet Malcolm's legacy was far from extinguished. His autobiography, published posthumously, became a seminal work, inspiring generations of activists and thinkers. Malcolm X's life and legacy continue to be a powerful force for change. His unwavering commitment to truth, justice, and equality left an indelible mark on the world. As we reflect on his final years, we are reminded of the extraordinary courage and conviction that defined his journey and the enduring impact of his fight for human rights. Malcolm X's final years were a testament to his growth as a leader and his steadfast dedication to his cause. The stakes were higher than ever, but his legacy of resilience, transformation, and advocacy for justice continues to inspire and challenge us to this day.